So let's talk about three different types of consequences that often come about as a result of someone passing away without a trust or a will, meaning that there wasn't a proper plan or structuring of their affairs. As a result, the law then steps in and then certain people start inheriting. And the reason why I want to share these ones with you is because they become the most controversial ones. Okay, so without further ado, let's get to the discussion. Listen, if you're new here, my name is Yolanda Nyengeza. I'm the director at Nyengeza Attorneys. It's good to have you here. If you're coming back for the second time, fourth time, 10th time, welcome back. Let's get to the content. Let's talk about the first circumstance. Now, this one is not necessarily as a result of you not drafting a will, but this one, or not having your affairs structured, but this one occurs as a result of you not updating your will, for example, or updating your affairs, right? Your estate planning structure. Here, you'd find that you, for example, were married prior to your death, and it happened that you divorced with your spouse. You guys were living separate lives. Now, remember, when people are married, they often will take out things so that they can benefit from each other. Normally, couples will include each other in their wills, and that is how it's supposed to be. Each spouse always will want to cater for their own spouse. You understand? Now, the problem is this. You've now split up with this person. People often forget, or it doesn't come to mind, that I need to be looking at my things. Are they still in order? Are they still reflecting my wishes? What happens? Spouse, you pass away. You leave behind maybe kids and your spouse. Now, what does your will say? Your will probably incorporated your spouse. Now, often what then happens is that the former spouse will have to inherit in this instance because they are written in the will. And it's unfortunate that you took so much time and you never updated your will. And as a result, that will have to stand, because the impression that you're giving is that I want things to be this way. This is when disputes arise. The family will often say, the way in which so-and-so, which is you, who has now passed away, felt about her former spouse or his former spouse, it's very unlikely that they would have wanted this will to be in place. But here's the thing. So-and-so, who has now passed away, did not even bother to check on their will, did not even think about, putting their affairs in order. And now that they are single, thinking about whether or not they want things to be handled in that manner. So that's one of the consequences of you neglecting looking after your affairs and checking them from time to time, and also updating them whenever there's a big event or major event that occurs in your life. Now, the second consequence of not drafting a will that often comes about, this one's a bit tricky, and it gets people very emotional because of the consequences that it has. I'm going to give you a typical example. I'm sure we've made this example before, so that you can get to understand what can happen sometimes when you don't draft a will. Let's say me and my husband are married, right? I'm going to call my husband Jack. We're married, we have 2 children. And it so happens that, we don't see the value of drafting a will. It doesn't even become a conversation. We're just living. The next thing, I pass away without having a will. And it's unfortunate that during that time when I'm passing away, the 50% that I'm leaving behind is not a lot. It's just minimal, right? Maybe it's in the form of a property. There isn't much that we have, right? But it's enough for us. Now, in this instance, because my value is very low, the 50% ends up going to Jack, who's my husband. Not a problem. Jack now owns 100% of the property that we had, and the kids are still there. But unfortunately, the kids, because the value of this estate was very low, they couldn't get anything. Right? Not a problem. Now, as you know, in most instances, when we leave a spouse behind, they're often going to want to remarry. And that's understandable, because now the marriage has ended. I'm not there. So now Jack decides to move on. Jack then marries. Now, as you would know, in most instances in South Africa, we love to get married in community of property. And Jack also does not have a will. This is not even a conversation that comes to mind. Do you see now? There's two things that are at play here. One, Jack doesn't have a will as well. Two, Jack is now married in community or property, which was the type of marriage that we had. And because of that type of marriage we had, he inherited everything. So the risk is that if Jack now passes away, possibility is that the new spouse is going to get everything. Now, surely so, time goes, Jack passes away, and the financial circumstances are relatively the same. And what ends up happening? What ends up happening is that unfortunately, because Jack had married in community or property, combined his estate, which was ours, with a new spouse, now everything has moved to who? To the new spouse. Now what happens under these circumstances? Obviously, you're thinking about my kids and Jack's kids. What's going to happen to them? They don't have a place to stay. Now that house that we had, which we had initially acquired, which was that of our family, because of us not drafting a will or seeing the importance of maybe having things such as trusts in place or structuring our affairs, what has now happened is that slowly but surely we have lost that property. Our children have lost that family property, and it now belongs to their stepmother, who is the new wife of Jack. And unfortunately, they can't lay a claim on that. So this is the other circumstance, or consequence rather, of not drafting a will, that a lot of people tend to find out only later and never actually understand, right? So that's why it's always important to just make sure you have something in place. Whether you're going to set up a trust, whether you're going to restructure your affairs somehow, just make sure you put things in place. Let's talk about the last one. Now, let's talk about the third type of situation that can occur. This one also tends to be something that rattles families, and they never really get to understand how things operate this way, right? But it often will creep in either if you draft a will and not properly so, or you don't draft a will at all. But I'll make an example. Let's say you're a single mother, right? You've got your child, whether major or minor. Now, in your mind, you know, in most instances, if you are in SA, you're going to know that not everything that I have is going to my child. And that's not a problem. And I'm not concerned about drafting anything. And that's okay. Now, let's say it so happens that the both of you get into an accident. And unfortunately so, you pass away instantly. And maybe your son then lasts for a year. And after that 1 year, they then pass away. Remember, everything that you had left for your son has not come to completion. There's still monies that are sitting there that he was going to get access to. But now, because they've passed away, who is going to claim those monies? So first thing that normally happens is you'll find that your own family, or rather my own family, will want to claim. And they're right to think that way. Normally your mother will want to claim, your siblings will try, but they will fail. Why are they failing? They are failing because that child who passed away after you, even though he did not get the opportunity to spend all of the money, unfortunately had someone who was a close relative to him. Who's that? The other parent that he has by blood. The other parent that he has by blood or adoption. That is the only person who can come forward to say, I'm going to claim. Whether they were in or out of that child's life. This one tends to rattle families. But why does it occur? It normally occurs because you don't have a will drafted. Now, when you have a will drafted, you normally think about these circumstances. And as you go, as you update your will over the years, you then think about the loopholes and get to create this watertight kind of situation in writing so that the right people that you want get to inherit from your things. But when you don't have a will, you don't even think about these things. And as a result, you'll find that these types of situations happen in your own family, with your own affairs, or rather with your own estate. So that brings us to the end of our discussion today. I hope it was helpful. Not to scare you, but since you are here, you are alive, you still have the capacity to do something. I hope it does inspire you to draft, put your affairs in order, reevaluate your situation if you do have a will, and see if you cannot update your affairs. Doesn't matter where you go, just make sure you do something so that at least these types of consequences don't have to affect your own type of family. We'll see you next time.